The day before yesterday, I decided to meet my online girlfriend after 2.5 years. But the very next day, during the company's anniversary celebration, the newly appointed CEO made her first appearance. I secretly took a photo of the female boss and sent it to my friends to show off her stunning beauty, but I was immediately caught by her. She coldly criticized me, saying that as an employee, I should focus on my work instead of thinking nonsense. My face turned bright red, feeling so embarrassed that I wanted to sink into the ground. To salvage some dignity, right after the party ended, I rushed to the CEO's office to explain myself. But when the door opened, I suddenly froze upon seeing a clay doll on her desk. Wasn't that the birthday gift I had personally made for my online girlfriend just a few days ago? It even had my initials engraved on it. When I realized this, I felt a chill run down my spine. Could it be that this new CEO was actually my online girlfriend of 3 years? Confirming that the boss in front of me was the girlfriend I had never met, I immediately felt tense and blurted out if that doll was made by her boyfriend. Lily Nguyen gently touched the head of the doll, a rare softness flashing in her eyes, but she quickly withdrew her smile and sternly scolded me. What does this have to do with you? If you shouldn't ask, then don't. What do you want here? I awkwardly touched my nose, my gaze reluctantly leaving the doll. CEO Lily, I didn't mean to take a sneaky photo of you. It's just that you look so much like my girlfriend that I couldn't help myself. Honestly, while this reason was fabricated, it seemed quite convincing in the current situation. But Lily Nguyen clearly didn't believe me at all. She sneered coldly. Can you think of any more ridiculous excuses? Look at your lecherous appearance. What girl would be so blind as to like you? My face immediately darkened a few shades, thinking that my first impression in her eyes was that terrible. I just wanted to drag my best friend out and give him a beating. It was all his fault for insisting on seeing pictures of beautiful women. At the same time, I silently cursed Lily Nguyen in my heart. When chatting with me online, she was so gentle. How could I have guessed that in real life, she would speak so harshly? Moreover, how could a girl who claimed to be a fresh graduate become such a powerful CEO? After leaving her office, I took out my phone and sent Lily Nguyen a cute fox sticker. She almost immediately replied, "Darling, what's wrong? Did someone make you unhappy?" The office door hadn't fully closed, and through the crack, I saw Lily Nguyen happily texting on her phone, the smile on her face completely different from the cold expression earlier. I gritted my teeth and replied, "Just got scolded by the boss. She said that no girl would ever look at a man like me." The phone on the other end immediately exploded with messages. I anxiously raised my head to peek through the door crack, fearing Lily Nguyen would become suspicious, and hurriedly ran to the restroom to reply to the messages. In the chat, Lily Nguyen was scolding herself fiercely. How could she say that to my darling? So annoying. My darling is the best man in the world. The boss must be blind. Darling, when we meet, I won't let anyone bully you. Besides her, it seemed no one in the company bullied me. I have been working at this company for nearly 2 years, and I never expected that my online girlfriend would become my boss, and I would be scolded by her. Who could I complain to now? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, so I decided to postpone the meeting with Lily Nguyen to make her worry for a few days to vent my frustration, and I texted, "I've been really busy lately. I probably won't have time this month." No way. Darling, I've been looking forward to this meeting for so long. How can it be postponed? The phone on the other end exploded again, sending dozens of crying emojis. Faced with the ironic situation that my girlfriend of 3 years was actually my boss, I couldn't gather my thoughts and felt extremely frustrated, so I exited the chat interface and stopped replying. I got a little peace, but it made the whole company tremble. Lily Nguyen suddenly became irritable, and any department that came to report work was scolded harshly. First, it was the sales department, then the finance department, which soon led to our department being caught in the crossfire. Due to a small error in the plan, Lily Nguyen called our group into her office, and as soon as she opened her mouth, she scolded us like a torrent. She didn't stop talking, not a single kind word, and my colleagues all bowed their heads, not daring to speak. Her strict demeanor was completely different from the gentleness she showed when chatting online. This kid is quite the performer. She looks so dignified, I couldn't help but murmur, almost voicing my thoughts aloud. Jonathan Tran, it seems you're not very convinced of my authority, are you? How could I not be convinced? Her gaze caught even my smallest actions. Lily Nguyen frowned at me, the aura of a leader making me feel breathless. I quickly waved my hands to explain. How could that be, CEO Lily? I truly appreciate your thorough guidance. I will always remember it. She snorted coldly, raising an eyebrow. You're quite quick with your words. Your planning must not be bad. Then she assigned me to redo the plan and submit it by the end of the day tomorrow. Under the sympathetic gazes of my colleagues, my mind went blank. Damn it. The workday was almost over, and she wanted me to redo the plan all by myself and submit it by tomorrow night. Clearly, she wanted me to pull an all-night. Lilingwen, you're something else. If you're going to publicly pressure me like this, don't blame me for being ruthless behind your back. I angrily returned to my seat and received a message from Lilingwen. Darling, don't be mad at me anymore. I miss you so much. I won't rush you about our meeting anymore. Can we wait until you're free? To save my colleagues from the hot water, I had to sacrifice myself a bit. After a few seconds of hesitation, I replied, okay, let me think about it. Seeing that I finally replied, she sent messages in rapid succession. That's great, darling. Finally, you're willing to talk to me. Tomorrow is your birthday. We might not meet, but I must send you a gift this year. You promised, so don't change your mind. That's great, darling. Finally, you're willing to talk to me. Tomorrow is your birthday. We might not meet, but I must send you a gift this year. You promised, so don't change your mind. She even attached a cute sticker at the end. After 3 years of online love, I had never given her my home address. Each time she begged to send a gift, I refused because I didn't want her to think I was the kind of man who was materialistic. But every year on her birthday, I always handmade gifts to express my feelings. It wasn't that I was stingy or didn't want to spend money, but I just wanted to keep this relationship pure. After all, she had always claimed to be an ordinary employee. I couldn't bear to add to her financial burden. Now that her identity as a CEO was revealed, I had nothing to hesitate about anymore. To give my colleagues a more pleasant working environment, I decided to sacrifice myself and send her an address, but it was the male center of the apartment complex. In such a large complex, it would be hard for her to find me. That night, I received a birthday gift sent by Lilingwen through express delivery. The gift box was beautifully wrapped, filled with paper stars, along with a luxurious and elegant mechanical watch. The handwritten letter had a faint scent of perfume, just like the fragrance she wore, with elegant handwriting that exuded sophistication, and every word contained her deep feelings for me. Just a few short sentences stirred my heart. I met Lilingwen 5 years ago, when she had just broken up with her first love. In a moment of intoxication, she sent a heartfelt message into an online wish jar. Normally, I don't engage in such things, but for some reason, that day I found myself on the site and stumbled upon her message. Seeing her words filled with pain, I couldn't help but write a long, comforting reply, and that's how our story began. After connecting on WeChat, we chatted for over a year before following the trend of falling in love online. Even though it was a virtual relationship, I had my principles. We could be open about our feelings, use couple photos, but no revealing faces, no video calls, and no meeting in person. At first, she didn't agree, but eventually, she couldn't resist my persistence and accepted. Thus, this relationship lasted for 3 years. 3 years might not seem too long, but it's certainly not short either. The feelings we nurtured during that time can't be measured by numbers. I took out my phone and texted, I received the gift and I really like it. Thank you. She quickly replied, as long as my boyfriend likes it, that's what matters. Each star in the box was folded by me. 999 stars symbolize eternal love. Happy birthday, my boyfriend. Oh, and the keychain was also handmade by me. You must always carry it with you. I rummaged through the pile of paper stars and, sure enough, found a handmade doll keychain. After all, it was her heartfelt gesture, so I tucked it into my pocket to take with me. Not long after, she texted again. Honey, are you still mad at me? Why haven't you called me your beloved wife or sweetheart lately? In the early days of our relationship, I used to call Lilingwen my beloved wife and sweetheart all the time, but ever since I found out she was my boss, I just couldn't bring myself to say those cheesy words anymore. It felt so awkward. After a long internal struggle, I finally forced myself to type sweetheart, beloved wife, in the chat and hit send. This form of address clearly made Lilingwen very pleased. The next morning, she unusually ordered coffee for the whole company, creating a wave of goodwill. But unfortunately, I was buried in creating a new plan all day, stressed to the point where I felt like my hair might fall out. After 3 hours of overtime, I finally completed the task. I was so exhausted that I collapsed into bed as soon as I got home, and my phone was filled with messages, but I didn't have time to read a single one. The next morning, I was awakened by a knock on the door. When I opened it, the apartment manager was panting in front of me, holding a pile of packages on the ground. There's still about 10 more. I was taken aback. The manager forced a smile. Mr. Cole, these packages are all for you, right? Last night, nearly 20 parcels arrived, all high-value items, and there was no space left at the receiving area, so I brought them up for you. I looked down in disbelief. They were all sent by Lily Nguyen via express delivery, a 1982 Law Fight wine, a limited edition Matai, a ginseng box worth over 10 million. Has she gone mad? Although the delivery address didn't specify the house number, the manager had previously helped me receive items, so this time he accurately determined my location. I quickly thanked him and sent him on his way, then opened my phone. Because I was so tired, I had slept deeply the night before and had no idea Lily Nguyen had sent me nearly 100 messages. I hurriedly texted her to explain that my boss had forced me to work on the plan all night, and I was so exhausted that I had fallen asleep without checking my messages. After a lot of reassurance, Lily Nguyen finally calmed down and promised me she wouldn't send any more packages in the future. That evening, the manager arranged for me to have dinner with a client. This project was related to the company's development direction for the next 6 months, so Lily Nguyen took it very seriously and decided to join us. The person in charge from the partner side was a wine enthusiast, and every time we negotiated, we ended up drinking to the point of losing track of time. This time, seeing Lily Nguyen as a beauty, he became even bolder, continuously pressuring her to drink. Director Lily, it's unreasonable to sit at the banquet table without drinking. If you don't drink, it's like you're not respecting me. So, how can we collaborate? Lily Nguyen's face darkened, clearly struggling to hold back her frustration. She hesitated for a moment, then finally picked up her glass of wine. I suddenly remembered the message she had sent me this morning, saying she was feeling very uncomfortable due to her period. So, instinctively, I stood up and snatched the glass of wine from her hand. You can't drink today. In that moment, all eyes at the table turned to me. Lily Nguyen looked at me in shock, her face seemingly flushed under the lights. Realizing my action had crossed a line, I awkwardly smiled and sat back down, then secretly took out my phone to text her. Sweetheart, today is a special day. Remember not to eat anything cold. Almost as soon as the message was sent, Lily Nguyen picked up her phone, and the corners of her mouth curled into a sweet smile that warmed my heart. Understood. I will listen to my beloved husband. From that moment on, no matter how much the partner pressured her, Lily Nguyen didn't touch a drop of alcohol. I had to take on the burden myself, and as a result, I ended up drinking quite a bit after the banquet. When we left the restaurant, I stumbled behind Lily Nguyen. At that moment, a server carrying a bowl of hot soup nearly bumped into her. After all, she was someone I had loved online for 3 years, and seeing her in danger, I instinctively rushed to pull her away. The familiar fragrance enveloped me, and at the same time, Lily Nguyen fell into my arms, my shoulder hitting the corner of the table, causing me to wince in pain. The next moment, I felt a soft touch on my cheek. Lily Nguyen unexpectedly kissed me. She froze for a few seconds, then panicked and stood up, her face flushed with embarrassment as she said, "Thank you. Are you okay?" I grimaced, rubbing my shoulder, and tried to stand up while shaking my head. "I'm fine. I'm not dead yet." Nia Yen scoffed, trying to appear calm, but her flushed airs betrayed her true feelings. Nia Yen stepped forward to help me, but when she saw my backpack lying on the ground, she suddenly froze in place. Following her stunned gaze, my heart sank. I didn't realize when the zipper of my backpack had partially opened, revealing a handmade keychain that was the gift Lily Nguyen had made for me. "What is this?" Nia Yen asked, reaching for my backpack. I quickly lifted it up, blocking her view. "It's nothing, just a toy I bought at the market, just something I picked up for fun. It's not worth anything." Lily Nguyen's expression immediately darkened, looking at me with suspicion, then angrily turned and walked away. At that moment, I realized I had misspoken and cursed myself for not being able to keep my mouth shut. Sure enough, not long after, Lily Nguyen's message came through. "Honey, does the decoration I made for you look like something from the market? Do you hate it?" Followed by a series of crying emojis. Had I known today would bring so much trouble, I would have rather not attended that banquet at all. I really was making things difficult for myself. I could only put on a brave face and reassure her. How could that be? The gift from my wife is one of a kind. I love it. And then send a series of kiss and hug stickers, which seemed to soothe her somewhat. Lily Nguyen didn't usually wear makeup, and she rarely even wore lipstick. The soft and light scent when she kissed my cheek seemed to linger, and I couldn't help but reach up to touch the spot where she had kissed me, reminiscing about the feeling, then quickly withdrew my hand. "No touching anymore. If you keep touching, it might seem a bit creepy. After all, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future." I had decided that once I prepared myself mentally, I would find a chance to confess my identity to Lily Nguyen and turn our online love into reality. But I had a feeling Lily Nguyen was starting to suspect me. Work continued as usual, but unlike before, I began to intentionally avoid her. However, strangely enough, no matter how much I tried to hide, her appearances in front of me increased, and each time we met, she would look at me with scrutinizing eyes, making me anxious to the point that my colleague at the next desk couldn't help but ask quietly, "Jonathan Tran, have you offended Director Lily recently? Why do I see her staring at you all the time?" I quickly glanced toward Lily Nguyen's office, irritated, and replied, "That's not possible." The colleague laughed knowingly and said in a low voice, "Then she definitely likes you. If you get promoted in the future, don't forget us." This kind of thing would affect girls to some extent, so I naturally didn't dare to admit it casually. I could only pretend to scroll through my phone and show my colleague a picture of the watch Lily Nguyen had given me. "Don't talk nonsense, my friend. I have a girlfriend. Look, this is the birthday gift she gave me a few days ago." Initially, I just wanted to cut off the rumors about Lily Nguyen, but unexpectedly, after seeing the picture, my colleague nearly jumped up. "Wow, my friend, you're really impressive." Hearing him say that, I was shocked. Normally, I don't delve much into luxury brands. I just knew that watch was definitely not cheap, but I never expected it to be priced over 100 million. My colleague's curiosity was immediately piqued, wanting to ask more. Just the day before, I had decided to meet my girlfriend, whom I had known online for 2.5 years, but the very next day, during the company's anniversary celebration, the newly appointed CEO made his first appearance. I secretly took a photo of my female boss and sent it to my friends to show off her stunning beauty, but I was immediately caught by her. She coldly criticized me, saying that as an employee, I should focus on the company's work instead of thinking nonsense. My face turned bright red, feeling so embarrassed that I wanted to sink into the ground to salvage a bit of my dignity. Right after the party ended, I rushed to the office of the female CEO to explain, but when the door opened, I suddenly froze upon seeing a clay doll on her desk. Wasn't that the birthday gift I had made by hand for my online girlfriend just a few days ago? It even had my initials engraved on it. When I realized this, I felt a chill run down my spine. Could it be that this newly appointed CEO was my online girlfriend of 3 years? Once I confirmed that the boss in front of me was indeed the girlfriend I had never met, I immediately felt tense and blurted out, asking if that doll was made by her boyfriend. Lily Nguyen gently touched the head of the doll, a rare softness flashing in her eyes, but she quickly withdrew her smile and sternly scolded me. "What does this have to do with you? If you shouldn't ask, then don't ask. What do you want here?" I awkwardly touched my nose, my gaze reluctantly shifting away from the doll. "CEO Lily, I didn't mean to take a sneaky photo of you. It's just that you look so much like my girlfriend that I couldn't help myself." To be honest, while this reason was fabricated, it seemed quite convincing in the current situation. But Lily Nguyen clearly didn't believe me at all. She let out a cold laugh. "Can you think of any more ridiculous excuses? Look at your lecherous appearance. What girl would be so blind as to like you?" My face immediately darkened a few shades, thinking about how bad my first impression must have been in her eyes. I just wanted to drag my best friend out and give him a beating. It was all his fault for insisting on seeing pictures of beautiful women. At the same time, I silently cursed Lily Nguyen in my heart. When chatting with me online, she was so gentle. How could I have guessed that in real life, she would speak so harshly? Moreover, how could a girl who claimed to be a fresh graduate become such a powerful CEO? After leaving the office, I took out my phone and sent Lily Nguyen a cute fox sticker. Review. She almost immediately replied, "Darling, what's wrong? Is something bothering you? Why is the office door still half open?" In the chat, Lily Nguyen was scolding herself fiercely, wondering how she could speak like that to her darling. How annoying! Her darling was the best man in the world. Her darling was the best man in the world. Her boss must be blind. "Darling, when we meet, I won't let anyone bully you." Besides her, it seemed no one in the company was bullying me. I had been working at this company for nearly 2 years, and I never expected that my online girlfriend would become my boss, and I would be scolded by her. Who could I complain to now? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I decided to postpone my meeting with Lily Nguyen so she could worry for a few days to vent my frustration. I texted, "I've been really busy lately. I probably won't have time this month." "No way. Darling, I've been looking forward to this meeting for a long time. How can it be postponed?" On the other side of the phone, messages exploded again, sending dozens of crying emojis. Faced with the absurd situation that my girlfriend of 3 years was my boss, I couldn't gather my thoughts and felt extremely frustrated, so I exited the chat interface and stopped replying. I wanted a bit of peace, but it made the whole company tremble. Lily Nguyen suddenly became irritable. Any department that came to report work was scolded harshly, starting with the sales department and then the finance department, all of which were reprimanded in turn. Soon, this fire spread to our department. Due to a small mistake in the plan, Lily Nguyen called our entire team into her office. As soon as she opened her mouth, she scolded us like pouring water, not stopping for a single kind word. This kid can act pretty well, I thought, unable to hold back my murmurs, almost voicing my thoughts. Jonathan Tran, you don't seem to respect me much, do you? I couldn't help but feel that way. Her gaze caught even my smallest actions. Lily Nguyen frowned at me, her authoritative presence making me feel suffocated. I quickly waved my hand to explain. How could that be, CO Lily? I truly appreciate your thorough guidance. I will always remember it. She snorted coldly, raising an eyebrow. Your tongue is quite nimble. The plan must not be bad. Then I'll assign this plan to you to redo and submit it to me before you leave tomorrow. Under the sympathetic gazes of my colleagues, my mind went blank. Damn it. The workday is almost over, and she wants me to redo the plan by tomorrow? Clearly, she wants me to pull an all-nighter. Lily Nguyen, you've gone too far with this public oppression. Don't blame me for being ruthless behind your back. I angrily returned to my seat when I received a message from Lily Nguyen. Darling, please don't be mad at me anymore. I miss you so much. I'm not pushing for our meeting anymore. Can we wait until you're free? To save my colleagues from the boiling water, I had to sacrifice myself a bit. After a few seconds of hesitation, I replied, okay, let me think about it. Seeing that I finally replied, she started sending messages rapidly. Great, darling. Finally, you're willing to talk to me. Tomorrow is my birthday. We might not be able to meet, but I must send you a gift. You promised, so you can't change your mind. She even attached a cute sticker. After 3 years of online love, I had never given her my home address. Every time she begged to send a gift, I refused because I didn't want her to think I was the kind of man who was materialistic. But every year on her birthday, I always made a gift by hand to show my sincere feelings. It wasn't that I was stingy or cheap. I just wanted to keep this relationship pure. After all, she always claimed to be an ordinary employee, and I couldn't bear to add to her financial burden. Now that her identity as a female CEO was revealed, I had nothing to hide anymore. Wanting my colleagues to have a more pleasant working environment, I decided to sacrifice myself and sent her an address, but it was the pickup point of the apartment complex. With such a large complex, it would be hard for her to find me. That night, I received a birthday gift from Lily Nguyen via express delivery. The gift box was beautifully wrapped, filled with paper stars, along with a luxurious and elegant mechanical watch. The handwritten letter had a faint scent of perfume, just like the fragrance she wore. Each stroke of her pen exuded elegance, and every word contained her deep feelings for me. Just a few short sentences stirred my heart. Lily Nguyen and I had known each other for 5 years. At that time, she had just broken up with her first love and, in a drunken state, sent a heartfelt message to a wish jar online. Normally, I didn't engage with such things, but that day, for some reason, I went there and accidentally found her message. Seeing her heartfelt and painful messages, I couldn't help but write a long, comforting note, and that was how our story began. After connecting on WeChat, we chatted for over a year, following the trend of online love. Even though it was a virtual relationship, I still had my principles. We could be open about our feelings, use couple photos, but no revealing faces, no video calls, and no meetings. At first, she disagreed, but eventually, she couldn't resist my persistence, so she accepted. Thus, this relationship lasted for 3 years. 3 years might not seem too long, but it wasn't short either. The feelings we nurtured during that time couldn't be measured by numbers. I took out my phone and texted, "Thank you. I received the gift, and I really like it." "Thank you." She quickly replied, "As long as my dear husband likes it, that's enough." Each star in the box was folded by me. 999 stars symbolize eternal love. "Happy birthday, my dear husband." Oh, and the keychain was also made by me. "You must always carry it with you." I rummaged through the pile of paper stars and indeed found a handmade doll keychain. After all, it was her heartfelt gesture. So, I put it in my pocket to carry with me. Not long after, she texted again. "Honey, are you still mad at me? Why haven't you called me dear wife or sweet baby lately?" In the early days of our relationship, I used to call her dear wife and sweet baby all the time, but since I found out she was actually my boss, I really couldn't bring myself to use those cheesy terms anymore. It just felt so awkward. After a long mental struggle, I finally reluctantly typed sweet baby, "Dear wife" in the chat and sent it. This way of addressing clearly made Lilingwen very happy. The next morning, she broke the norm and ordered coffee for the whole company, creating a wave of goodwill. Finally, after 3 hours of hard work, I completed my task. I was so exhausted that as soon as I got home, I collapsed into bed. My phone was filled with messages, but I didn't have time to read a single one. The next morning, I was awakened by a knock on the door. As I opened it, the apartment management staff stood there, panting, holding a pile of packages on the ground. There are still a dozen more. I was taken aback. The management staff forced a reluctant smile. "These packages are all for you, right? Last night, nearly 20 parcels arrived, all high-value items, and there was no more room at the delivery point, so I brought them up for you." I bowed my head in disbelief. All of them were sent by Lilingwen. Express delivery of 1982 Lafite wine, a limited edition Maodai, ginseng worth over 10 million. Has she gone mad? Although the delivery address didn't specify the house number, the management staff had previously helped me receive items, so this time, they accurately identified my location. I hurriedly thanked the management staff and sent them on their way. Then I opened my phone. I had slept so deeply last night due to exhaustion that I completely missed nearly 100 messages from Lilingwen, all without a response. She was frantic and, unable to reach me, resorted to spamming me with packages. I quickly texted her to explain that my boss had forced me to work on a project all night, and I was too tired to check my messages. After much coaxing, Lilingwen finally calmed down and promised not to send me any more packages in the future. That evening, the management staff arranged for me to have dinner with a client. This project was related to the company's development direction for the next 6 months, so Lilingwen attached great importance to it and decided to join us. The person in charge from the partner side was a notorious drinker. Every time we negotiated, we ended up so drunk we didn't know where we were. This time, seeing Lilingwen, a beauty, he became even bolder and continuously pressured her to drink. "Lily, it wouldn't be right to sit at the banquet without drinking. If you don't drink, it's like you're not respecting me. How can we cooperate like this?" Lilingwen's face darkened, clearly struggling to hold back. After a moment of hesitation, she finally picked up her glass. I suddenly remembered the message she sent me this morning, saying she was feeling unwell due to her period. Instinctively, I stood up and snatched the glass from her hand. "You can't drink today." In that moment, all eyes at the table turned to me, and Lilingwen looked at me in surprise, her face seeming to flush slightly under the lights. Realizing I had overstepped, I forced a smile and sat back down. Then I discreetly took out my phone and texted her, "Sweetheart, today is a special day. Remember not to eat anything cold." Almost immediately, as the message arrived, Lilingwen picked up her phone, the corners of her mouth curling into a sweet smile that warmed my heart. "Understood. I will listen to my dear husband." From that moment on, no matter how much the partner pressured her, Lilingwen didn't touch a drop of alcohol. I had to take the brunt of it, and as a result, I ended up drinking quite a bit after the banquet. After leaving the restaurant, I stumbled along behind Lilingwen. At that moment, a waiter carrying a bowl of hot soup approached and nearly bumped into her. After all, she was the one I had loved online for 3 years. Seeing her in danger, I instinctively rushed forward to pull her out of the way. The familiar scent enveloped me, and at the same time, Lilingwen fell into my arms, my shoulder hitting the edge of the table painfully, making me grit my teeth. The next moment, a soft sensation brushed against my cheek. Lilingwen unexpectedly kissed me. She froze for a few seconds, then panicked, stood up abruptly, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Thank you. Are you okay?" I grimaced, rubbing my shoulder, trying to stand up while shaking my head. "I'm fine. I'm not dead yet." Following her gaze, my heart sank. I realized that the zipper of my bag had partially opened, revealing a handmade keychain inside, which was a gift Lilingwen had made for me. "What is this?" Lilingwen asked, reaching for my bag. I quickly lifted the bag, blocking her view. "It's nothing, just a toy I bought from the market, just something random. It's not worth anything." At that moment, I realized I had misspoken and wished I could slap myself. Sure enough, not long after, a message from Lilingwen came through. "Honey, the decoration I made for you looks just like something from the market, doesn't it? Do you hate it?" Immediately followed by a series of crying emojis. I could only shamelessly comfort her. How could I? The gift from my dear husband is one of a kind. I love it, and sent a series of kiss and hug stickers, which seemed to ease her a bit. Lilingwen doesn't usually wear makeup, and she rarely puts on lipstick. The soft and faintly fragrant feeling when she kissed my cheek lingered. I couldn't help but reach up to touch the spot where she had kissed me, reminiscing about that sensation, then quickly withdrew my hand. I shouldn't touch it anymore. That would seem a bit creepy. Anyway, there will be more chances in the future. I had decided to wait until I was mentally prepared to find an opportunity to confess my identity to Lily Nguyen, to turn our online love into reality as soon as possible, but I felt like Lily Nguyen was starting to suspect me. Just the day before, I had decided to meet my online girlfriend after 2.5 years, but the very next day, the company opened a new recruitment drive and my cousin, who was the most talkative person in the family, happened to get hired. Since she started her internship, she had taken it upon herself to push me to get married to settle down. On my way, I unexpectedly saw a strange man walk into Lily Nguyen's office. From my angle, I could clearly see him smiling as he approached her. Lily Nguyen, before we broke up, it was all unavoidable. Can you forgive me? I heard you've been eating poorly and sleeping badly because of me, crying for days. You even came back here specially. It must mean you still have feelings for me. Shall we get back together? I promise I'll treat you well from now on. There are indeed men capable of making someone lose all affection in an instant. The moment I saw him, Lily Nguyen's expression immediately darkened. The dung beetle in disguise still stinks as before. True treasure. You really haven't changed at all. It turned out he was Lily Nguyen's scummy ex-boyfriend. She had told me about him, but after we established our relationship, she never mentioned him again. Why was he suddenly back? It turned out he was Lily Nguyen's scummy ex-boyfriend. She had told me about him, but after we established our relationship, she never mentioned him again. Why was he suddenly back? Seeing Lily Nguyen's cold demeanor and sarcastic words, I clenched my fists and then slowly relaxed. There were many colleagues passing by, so I couldn't continue eavesdropping and hurriedly went into the restroom. During lunch, I happened to overhear colleagues discussing. What do you think? Chu is really a good match for our Lily, handsome and well off, a perfect match. The way he treats her, they might get back together soon. I clenched my fists so tightly I almost broke the chopsticks in my hand, a bitter feeling rising in my heart. I was just an ordinary person. The total assets of my family were barely enough for a down payment on a house, and I struggled every month to pay rent and car loans. This gap made me feel an involuntary sense of inferiority. I had to admit that Lily Nguyen and I were not from the same world. Tossing and turning all night, I decided that it was better to endure a short pain than a long one. Instead of waiting for her family to intervene, I would take the initiative to end things so she could leave more easily. I wrote and deleted and rewrote for nearly half an hour before finally sending a message. I've thought about this for a long time. We're not compatible. I don't want to ruin your life any longer. Let's break up. It turned out this was what a real breakup felt like. Very uncomfortable. Once I had made the decision to part ways, I returned the watch worth over 100 million that Lily Nguyen had given me, along with expensive bottles of wine and other related items from our life together. Not long after, my phone was bombarded with messages. I glanced through them. They were all desperate pleas from Lily Nguyen, but I didn't dare to open them, let alone read them closely for fear I would soften. So I decided to unfriend her as well. The next day during lunch, I overheard colleagues talking about seeing CEO Mr. Liu secretly wiping away tears in the office, and I felt very uncomfortable, staring at my lunch with no appetite, starting to wonder if I was being too harsh. Just then, a colleague approached me, continuing the gossip. Jonathan Tran, let me see the watch your wealthy girlfriend gave you. I want to admire it a bit. My mind was a mess, and I had no desire to chat, so I blurted out. We broke up. The very next second, I heard a familiar voice from behind. What watch? Reflexively turning around, I caught sight of Lily Nguyen's slightly red eyes, which startled me. I immediately smiled sheepishly and explained, No, I was just joking. I didn't expect him to believe it was true. My colleague wanted to say more, but I quickly pulled him away. However, the burning gaze from behind remained fixed on me, making me feel genuinely uncomfortable. Thankfully, Lily Nguyen didn't chase after me, and I breathed a sigh of relief. But it seemed that to completely dispel any doubts about myself, I had to come up with another plan. Just as I was dealing with this major trouble, a new one came crashing in. The company opened a new recruitment drive, and my cousin happened to get hired, becoming the most talkative person in the family since joining the company. During her internship, she took it upon herself to fulfill the task my mother assigned her, to urge me to get married for peace of mind. To avoid the family's pressure about marriage and to silence my cousin's incessant chatter, I had to use the excuse of a 3-year online relationship to shut her up. What? A 3-year online relationship? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? With such a ridiculous excuse, she shot me a disbelieving glance. Unless you provide evidence, don't blame me for being rude. Reluctantly, I pointed towards Lily Nguyen's office and admitted, she is my online girlfriend. You mean Lily, the CEO? My cousin immediately became agitated. After I recounted the entire love story, she patted her chest and promised, don't worry, I'll definitely help you bring the beauty home soon. Stop it. If it weren't for my patience and composure, the beauty would have already been in my arms. I don't need you for that. I've already suggested breaking up, and she doesn't even know my true identity, so don't cause any trouble. I glared at her, threateningly, fearing she might do something sneaky. My cousin raised an eyebrow and chuckled. Don't worry, I work with great care. No, I'm not at all reassured. And indeed, the next day, my troublemaker cousin caused a scene. The company organized a welcome party for new employees. I thought Lily Nguyen, as the CEO, would skip this basic activity, so I attended with the mindset of enjoying whatever meal I could. To my surprise, as soon as I sat down, Lily Nguyen pushed the door open and walked in. I quickly turned my head to pretend to chat with a colleague, deliberately hiding my anxiety. Hey, love, what are you busy with? Mom called you repeatedly, but you didn't answer, so she called me. I quickly checked my phone and indeed had several missed calls from my mother. Since it was a company party and I had to sit at the same table as Lily Nguyen, I feared she might send a message, and if the notifications kept ringing, it could raise unnecessary suspicions. To avoid risks, I turned off my phone and stood up to step out of the room to call my mother. Who was that girl just now? Why did she call you love? Her voice was gentle but carried a hint of unexplainable frustration. I was startled and quickly realized she was referring to Vanessa Tran. I honestly replied, CEO Lily, she's my cousin who just started her internship. Vanessa Tran, my cousin, surely did this on purpose to provoke Lily Nguyen. To avoid gossip, I had never mentioned to any colleagues that Vanessa Tran was my cousin, but unexpectedly, Lily Nguyen took the initiative to ask. If I continued to hide it, it would only seem more suspicious, so I had to confess. After hearing this, Lily Nguyen's expression gradually relaxed, and she nodded before turning back into the room. I found it a bit strange. My phone rang again, and when I opened it, I saw my cousin had changed her emotional status from a crying face to a bright, smiling face. How strange. It seemed her mood was fluctuating like the weather. Lily Nguyen calmly took a sip of water and shook her head, denying. No. I've been in a relationship for 3 years. Everyone looked at each other in surprise. So CEO Lily has a boyfriend? Next time, you must bring him to meet us. I wonder what kind of guy could win the heart of our wonderful CEO. Right. Several colleagues who loved gossip chimed in. I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, but I felt Lily Nguyen's gaze flicker over to me, making my heart race. Could it be that she already knew my true identity? I raised my glass to drink water, trying to hide my panic. Suddenly, under the table, Vanessa Tran pinched my thigh hard. Ouch! I yelped, and facing the eyes of the whole table, I had to stifle the pain and shoot a glare at the troublemaker. Yes, you must bring him to meet us. Lily Nguyen looked at my strange expression, her eyes slightly crinkling with a hint of a smile. All right, I will definitely introduce him to everyone soon. I avoided her gaze and casually replied, Great. Then, by chance, I looked up and saw Lily Nguyen's eyes on me. I couldn't tell if it was an illusion, but I thought I saw a fleeting, inscrutable smile in her eyes. Just as I was about to explore it further, it vanished like a gentle breeze. After the meal, my colleagues became bolder, starting to chatter excitedly about who was still single. I felt like I was sitting on a pile of fire, but ultimately, I couldn't escape. It wasn't long before they turned to me. Hey, aren't you the one who just broke up with your wealthy girlfriend? Let me introduce you to someone. My sister is 24 this year, fair-skinned, tall, and wants to get to know you. I casually replied, sure, but immediately, Lily Nguyen slammed her hand on the table and stood up, her gaze piercing straight at me. Jonathan Tran, come outside with me for a moment. I need to talk to you. I swallowed hard, feeling extremely resistant, but my body had no choice but to follow her. As soon as we reached the emergency exit, Lily Nguyen pushed me against the wall, her voice a mix of anger and sadness. Jonathan Tran, so, if I don't expose you, you will never admit it to me? I was stunned, lowering my head to look at her. At that moment, Lily Nguyen was very close to me, her face just a few centimeters away. Her sparkling eyes seemed filled with starlight, making my heart race faster, and my breath quickened. I quickly turned my head to avoid her gaze, hiding my panic. CEO Lily, what are you talking about? I don't understand. She bit her lip, her body pressing closer, her warm breath brushing against my neck, further unsettling me. At this point, why won't you admit it? Honey, did I do something wrong to make you angry? Before she could finish her sentence, tears streamed down Lily Nguyen's face, her pitiful expression making my heart feel even more tangled. If it weren't for the fear of scaring her, I would have really wanted to hold her in my arms right then. After a few seconds of hesitation, I sighed and admitted, "Don't cry anymore." I haven't dared to admit it because I'm still thinking about whether this relationship should exist. She looked up at me, her eyes red and still holding back a few tears. Should it exist? What do you mean? I sighed and continued. The gap between you and me is too big. The two of us are from completely different worlds. Even if you agree, your family won't accept us being together, so why don't we? Her warm palm pressed against my mouth, stopping the words I was about to say. The moment our skin touched, we both froze for a moment, as if jolted by electricity. Lily Nguyen quickly withdrew her hand. Although it only lasted for 2 brief seconds, I could still distinctly feel the softness and warmth, a gentle tremor in her palm. The atmosphere became stifling as I looked into her deep eyes, the frustration and disappointment within them replaced by an unnameable determination. If you're worried about this, you don't need to be concerned at all. My parents will definitely like you. Initially, I remained skeptical of her words until the next day when Quentin Liu and Lana Nguyen cornered me right at my desk, and I realized the true meaning behind Lily Nguyen's words. They will definitely like you. Lana Nguyen, the chairwoman, smiled warmly as she placed a gift box on my desk, her voice gentle yet filled with excitement. You are indeed Nguyen's boyfriend, aren't you? Truly a remarkable talent with an extraordinary demeanor. I may have rushed a bit with this small gift from your aunt. Please don't mind it. When you two get engaged, I'll make it up to you with something more thoughtful. I stood up abruptly, so tense that I stammered. Mom, no. Dad, it's not. After a moment of awkwardness, I finally managed to say, Hello, sir, hello, Aunt. Lana Nguyen chuckled, her beautiful eyes, reminiscent of Lily Nguyen, looked at me as if she were gazing at her own son. Quentin Liu remained there with a serious expression, looking somewhat intimidating, and then he suddenly spoke. You are Jonathan Tran, right? I immediately straightened my back. Yes, Chairman. I had been working at the company for over 2 years and had met the chairman a few times, but this was the first time I faced him in such a special situation, and I was genuinely a bit nervous. Very well. Come over to our house this weekend. I breathed a sigh of relief and awkwardly nodded in agreement. As soon as they left, the entire company seemed to explode with chatter. My colleagues, who had previously speculated about my wealthy girlfriend, were now in shock. Damn, you really kept this under wraps. I've suspected something unusual between you and General Manager Quentin for a while now, and yet you wouldn't admit it. Other colleagues gradually regained their composure and began to buzz with excitement. I didn't know how to explain. I could only stand there, flustered. Just then, Lily Nguyen walked into the office, gripping my hand tightly, our fingers intertwined. She beamed with joy, her clear voice ringing out. Let me reintroduce everyone. This is my boyfriend, Jonathan Tran. Everyone collectively took a deep breath, my heart pounding as if it wanted to leap out of my chest. She openly declared our relationship, so straightforwardly. Lily Nguyen's small hand tightened around mine, her eyes shining like the sun. Now everyone knows you're my boyfriend. There's no escaping now. I smiled slowly, tightening my warm hand in my palm. You can't run away. You won't escape for the rest of your life. That weekend, coinciding with New Year's Eve, I brought along a carefully prepared gift and followed Lily Nguyen to her home. The 3-story villa of the Lily family was magnificent and grand, yet it gave me an indescribable sense of warmth. Her parents welcomed me enthusiastically, as if they wanted to marry their daughter off to me the very next day, which left me feeling a bit overwhelmed. After dinner, Lily Nguyen and I strolled hand in hand along the riverbank. I couldn't help but ask, don't you think your parents are a bit too enthusiastic about me? Lily Nguyen tried to suppress her laughter, but eventually burst out. Back then, after breaking up with Chu Treasure, I almost fell into depression. My parents were really worried, introducing me to a new date every few days. I kept resisting, saying that I wouldn't marry in the future and would live alone for the rest of my life. I was taken aback. No wonder they fear their precious daughter might really not get married, so as soon as they found out she had a boyfriend, they immediately wanted to marry her off to feel at ease. I found it both amusing and absurd. I never expected to easily disrupt a wealthy family's plans like this. By the riverside, the crowd was bustling, and the lights were dazzling. Lily Nguyen suddenly moved closer to me, leaning in to whisper in my ear. Darling, Finally, this year we can celebrate New Year's Eve together. I shivered slightly, feeling her warm breath against my ear, stirring my heart. I hoarsely leaned down to whisper in her ear. Has anyone ever told you not to whisper like that into a man's ear? Why not? Lily Gwyn was indeed adorably innocent. Looking into her wide, confused eyes, I couldn't hold back any longer and leaned down to kiss her lips. Because if you do, I will really want to make you mine.